Hi guys, it's your Island Girl and I'm back with another reaction video for you today. And today I'm reacting to 10 lesser known British inventions that change the world. Alright guys, so this one is coming from Girl Gone London. Go over and show her some love. The link will be in the description below. And yes, I got permission from her to use her content. Alright guys, alright. With that said, I've done a video already about inventions that were made by Brits, and I had no clue with majority of them. I was in shock. So I want to see the lesser ones that are not really known by people and see what's on the list. All right. So come on in, wrap back with a smile on your face and enjoy. To all my regular schmeglers, day one, sweetie pie, sweetie poos. Come on in, wrap back with a smile on your face and enjoy. Let's get into this video, guys. Don't forget to give a big thumbs up. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. And do what? Share if you can. Here we go.
If you haven't been living under a rock, and probably even if you have, you'll know that some pretty major inventions have come out of the UK. For instance, the World Wide Web, the steam engine, and even the chocolate bar. But this episode isn't about those. It's about the way more interesting stories of the inventions you probably didn't know were British. This is a video about fascinating things like linoleum, marine chronometers, and the modern torpedo. Let's get started. First up, linoleum. Everyone now hates linoleum because it's gone out of fashion, but honestly, everyone also once loved linoleum because it's awesome and easy to clean, and your grandma probably had it all over the house. This smooth floor covering is made from a mixture of linseed oil, flax, wood flour, cork, and pigments, and it's typically on a canvas backing and pressed between really heavy rollers. But this isn't a video about how linoleum is made, it's about who made it, and that was an Englishman named Frederick Walton. The year was 1855, and our pal Frederick had an oops moment when he forgot to seal a container of linseed oil. His bad, but also his good, because it went on to then make him very successful. When he returned to the container later on, he saw that a skin of solidified oil had formed on top of it. As he peeled it off, he wondered to himself in what way this weird rubbery substance could be used. By 1860, he had created a patent for linoleum, coming from the Latin word linum, meaning flax, and oleum, meaning oil. He had a manufacturing company set up in 1864 outside of London and basically ruled the linoleum exports for a while. But he also made another mistake when he didn't register linoleum as a trade name, meaning he lost a court case where other people were starting to sell different brands of linoleum. With that, it's considered to be the first product name that turned into a generic term. Next on my list are...
Guys, I would not for a second thought that linoleum was British made. And not only that, guys, that's what I had in my house in Jamaica. I'm telling you, my grandmother loved me some linoleum, guys. Everywhere in the house. And like she said, she's so right. It was so easy to clean. And it really made the place look amazing. You understand? You can't go around that. I'm like, wow, linoleum. I'm like, British made in 1800s. That's a long time ago. But look how crazy it is. Somebody has run with the name and then there comes back and forth. Wow. Guys, that's something. Man, look at that. All right, let's see the next one.
Cat's eyes. Not the actual eyes of cats, but these things in the road that are reflective and help you stay in your lane when it's dark out. I had no idea what these things were called until I researched for this video. And then I said to my husband, hey, you know those reflective thingies on the road? Apparently the British invented those. And he said, you mean cat's eyes? And I said, how do you know what they're called? And then I wondered if this was like a me thing or an American public schooling thing. Anyway.
It's not just a me thing. It's not just a her thing. I did not know that. And I guarantee you, when my kids get home from school and I ask them what it is, they can't tell me either. So I think a lot of people did not know. Because when she said cat eyes, I'm like, cat eyes? What's she talking about? But here we go, learning something new today. But let her continue.
They were invented in the year 1934 by a man from Yorkshire named Percy Shaw. It's super simple, but Percy has saved countless lives over the years with this invention.
Yep.
He worked initially as a road contractor, so he was already a little bit more in tune with this sort of thing than your average citizen, but the idea came about when he was driving home from a pub late at night on Yorkshire roads and didn't realize he was very close to a steep drop on one side of the road until a cat who just happened to be sitting on a fence by the side of the road, allegedly, looked at his car and reflected his headlights back to him in the cat's eyes.
Oh.
At least this is the story that Percy told, so it could be 100% false, but he did come up with them and started to figure out how he could use a glass sphere to reflect the headlamps of cars. People weren't sold at first, and sales were initially slow, but then the blackouts of World War II started, and they realized that actually it's kind of dark out and we can't really see. So the Ministry of Transport started to make large orders, and the rest is history. Next.
No, I ain't gonna lie. That's amazing because it has saved countless of lives. No doubt about it. But imagine how it came about, allegedly. He coming home from a pub and he couldn't see, and a cat sitting on a fence. But look how that idea came about. Isn't that crazy, guys? Just think about it. An idea just pop out that thin air and look at where it's at today. And that, to me, it should not even be known as a lesser British invention. This should be out there for the world to know, because this is crazy. Because people all over the world use it. Wow.
I bet you're wondering who in the world invented the hypodermic syringe. It's an interesting topic, actually. This is what has enabled the modern jab, or shot, as we say in America, and it's all down to a Scottish man named Alexander Wood. He studied arts and medicine in 1832 and established his own private medical practice in Scotland in 1839, but it wasn't until the 1850s when he came up with a hypodermic needle. There already existed a hollow needle, but he essentially added a plunger onto this and made the syringe glass, so now the doctors could see inside and be more accurate with dosages. He was fascinated with finding ways to relieve localized pain in people, which is a very noble thing to be fascinated by, unlike my fascination with watching true crime documentaries on Netflix, which helps literally no one. He did have sort of a competitor unknowingly. It was a French surgeon who reported a similar invention in the same year, but honestly, the French guy's wasn't as good because his was made of silver, so you couldn't see inside of it, and he used a screw to push the medicine in, unlike the plunger. Plus, he tested on sheep while Wood tested on humans to make sure it really worked. So the French man didn't get credit, and Alexander Wood has gone down in history. Next on my list is
Okay, Mr. Alexander Wood, thank you very much, because that is smart. You can see how much you're administering. It wasn't being tested on animal, because we all don't know how that goes with testings. And, you know, it's the way it's administered, the plunger to push the medicine out. That's a smart idea. And it's in the 1800s as well. That's a long time ago. And it's a Scotman. Listen, you guys have made so many inventions that have changed the world. And it's crazy that majority of these inventions, a lot of people does not know that it was British made, to be honest with you guys. It's just, majority of the time, you always think, oh, it's an American made or it's Chinese made. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Something very modern, the iPod. But Steve Jobs created the iPod, you might be saying to yourself. Yeah. And that's true, but there's also more to this story. There's a man called Kane Kramer, who is still involved in the world of British inventions, and he developed the first digital audio player in 1979. It was only capable at the time of playing 3.5 minutes of music stored on a chip, but you can see from the design here and how close it is to the original iteration of the iPod. Yep. Unfortunately, he had to let the patent expire around 1998 due to a lack of funding, and while Apple did acknowledge his original design in court cases in later years, Kramer never really got anything out of it and is quoted as saying, "To be honest, I was just so pleased that finally something that I had done, which has been a huge success and changed the music industry, was being acknowledged." The next British...
Aww. So So his invention now, Kramer's invention reminds me of the lady that made the fidget spinner. She made it and it wasn't patent and somebody else took it and run with it and made millions from it and she haven't made anything. So but he's such a sweetheart and so like how you say not puffed up with pride that he said, look, I'm proud, I'm happy that my invention changed the world in the music industry. You understand what I mean? And even though Apple gave him credit, I think they should have at least given him some money because it was mainly his idea. And it's crazy how the patent, the time for it ran out. It's yeah, but that's amazing. Respects to him.
Invention on my list, which is quite the departure from what we've been over so far, is the modern torpedo, the weapon you use to detonate enemy ships. An English engineer, Robert Whitehead, wasn't the only one who had attempted to work on the torpedo design, but he, along with a man named Giovanni Lupus, an officer in the Austro-Hungarian Navy, made the best advances and thus went down in history for this invention. Okay. Robert Whitehead had been involved in engineering since the age of 16, starting as an apprentice in Manchester and then eventually traveling to France and Italy to work as a marine engineer. Now, Lupus, on the other hand, had spent time trying to develop waterborne weapons, including a floating torpedo that was powered by a clockwork motor, but his was unreliable and honestly way more dangerous than anyone was even comfortable with. So Whitehead tried to perfect this model and ended up creating a driverless underwater missile that would detonate on impact. The Lupus Whitehead torpedo, created in 1866, was much more practical and safe for use. Until it gets to its final destination, and he kept refining it until sea services around the globe started adopting it. Sadly for Lupus, he signed a contract with Whitehead that allowed for Whitehead to have the rights on future sales of the torpedo, and Whitehead became very wealthy and got to add the torpedo to the list of British inventions, while Lupus apparently died relatively bitter, but that's why you think twice about what you sign. Next up.
What? You're right about that. Think twice about what you sign. But that is something. Can you imagine that? So he started out early, from 16, as an apprentice. That's an early age to be in engineering. You know what I mean? So you could see that that was his passion. But imagine when he got to looking at the Frenchmen and say, look, unmanned torpedo. His was like, everybody was kind of afraid of it, but he was like, let me perfect this thing. And then he ended up becoming wealthy. How interesting is that, huh?
Sticking with the marine theme is the marine chronometer. This is one of those things that will make you glaze over if you dive too deep into it, which wasn't an intentional pun, but we're leaving it in the script because it's dumb. So a marine chronometer, for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure which is none of you because we're all up on the latest marine chronometer news, is a navigational tool that is carried on a ship to determine longitude. It does this by comparing Greenwich Mean Time with the time at the current location found from observing celestial bodies, obviously. It was incredibly important and a huge technical achievement in its time because ships needed effective navigation for long sea voyages. Okay. And that technical achievement was created by none other than John Harrison, an English carpenter and clockmaker. There was actually a financial reward offered for someone who could come up with this invention because there had been quite a few naval disasters that British Parliament did not want to repeat, so they offered up to £20,000 in the early 1700s, an equivalent of almost £4 million these days. Unfortunately, John never saw a lot of this money for political reasons, but he did go down in history as the creator of the marine chronometer. Honestly, he probably would have chosen the money, but we can't change that now. Now, John was another Yorkshire man originally, and he built and repaired clocks in his spare time. It took him about 30 years of refining and testing to really succeed at the marine chronometer, and this was a feat that many scientists, including Isaac Newton, doubted could ever be built. Harrison had to come up with something that was going to be accurate over long intervals at sea without adjusting it, as well as something that wasn't affected by variations in temperature, pressure, humidity, and the constantly moving ship, obviously, as well as sea salty air. Eventually, he did it and earned himself and the marine chronometer a spot on this list of great British inventions. Next on our list.
Wow. It took him 30 years to perfect this. Newton thought it would have never happened, but he did it. Can you imagine that? 20,000 pounds back then would, like she said, it would work out. Because I'm like, back then in the 70s, that's a lot of money that would work up to 4 million. That's a lot. And most of it, she said, due to politics, he didn't get most of the money. We all know how that channel works till today. But that's just amazing that he was like fully invested in making sure that this chronometer, listen, that word, work. So that right there, you have to give respect and due to the British inventions that were made that a lot of people were that a lot of people do not know that were made by British people. Isn't it something? Because these are something that are still used still today, and these are inventions that change the world. But majority of us don't know, because when she said it, I'm like, what are you talking about? Until she explained. Wow.
This is something far more simple. The tin can. This is an interesting one because the British man, Peter Durand, who was a merchant, received the first patent for the idea of preserving food using tin cans around 1810. But in the patent itself, he specifically mentions that the idea for this was communicated to him by a friend from abroad, which turned out to be a French inventor who actually came up with it. But the French inventor had only experimented with small food volumes, and Durand envisioned a much larger scale production. Durand's patent was also specifically for the preservation technique of using tin cans for food, and he has retained the credit for the first tin canned food patent.
Wow.
So technically, this is a French invention that the British came along and made better and put into large scale use, so it's included in this list. Okay. Moving along, let's talk about...
Can't take it from it. He perfected it. So you have to give credit where credit is due, even though it started in French. His had to deal with more on a more massive scale, a more larger scale of food preservation. So he got it. The patent. He was precise in his patenting. So if that's a word, so he got the credit for it. But it was a friend, which I appreciate the fact that he said that and didn't just keep that information to himself. It was a Frenchman's idea, and he worked on it and perfected it.
Synthetic dye. Until the mid 1800s, dyes came from natural sources like minerals and insects. But in 1856, an 18-year-old Englishman called William Henry Perkin accidentally came up with the first synthetic dye. It was a brilliant purple color, and it happened because he was trying to find a treatment for malaria during his Easter holidays from college. Side note to those of you still at school, stop scrolling TikTok and do something more useful. He was doing an experiment with coal tar. And while the experiment failed, and I really don't completely understand the experiment because I'm not that smart, he realized that the oily residue left over would stain silk. Now, his purple dye changed manufacturing history, and he immediately was like, let's let someone else find the treatment for malaria. I'm riding this wave. So he applied for a patent and helped to establish the modern chemical industry. He retired at the age of 36 and then just enjoyed carrying out research in other areas of chemistry. Second to last on our list.
I know that's right. Look, I'm not gonna find that cure for malaria or that treatment. So guess what? I stumble upon something, so I'm gonna stick with it at the age of 16. Listen to that age. He's not the only one. The other one with the chronometer, the engineer, 16 years old in college. Man, you're right. Stop scrolling TikTok and all these places and stick to learning for those in school. Because that's smart. And he retired so early at 32, and he continued to do research and do what he loved. Wow, I'm telling you, when ideas come across, there's nothing you can do but follow through. Follow through, because you never know where you go, and pattern your work right away. If you have an idea, pattern it, because people have a tendency to run with stuff. Let's hear the last one on the list.
Is float glass. Float glass is a sheet of glass made by floating molten glass on a bed of molten metal, and it gives the glass a very uniform thickness and a very flat surface. Modern windows are usually made from float glass, making it a very, very important invention. And who was the man behind it? He was an Englishman named Alistair Pilkington, born in 1920 and educated in Cambridge. He a degree in mechanical science after the war ended and joined a company called the Pilkington Brothers in 1947, which funnily enough had no actual relation to him despite having the same name. He came up with the idea of float glass in 1952, it was announced to the world in 1959, and it quickly became the most popularly produced form of glass around the world due to its high quality with no additional polishing required and easy ability to shape it. You can use it in automobile glass, mirrors, windows, as I mentioned, furniture like tables, and so much more. Finally, let's talk about the ATM or cash.
Okay, because I'm like, float glass, I'm not getting it. So, well, I'm looking at it now. That's an amazing use all around the world, all around the earth. It is used. How fascinating is that? Just the thought of it. Wow, you like I said, pounce upon an idea, you don't let it go, you perfect it in, and look, we're using it still till today. Wow.
Point. There are actually two Scottish men that claim the credit, and this is kind of a source of dispute. The first man is named James Goodfellow. He first patented automatic cash machines that used PIN numbers in May of 1966, more than a year before the first machine was ceremonially opened. But the machine that was opened in 1966 was developed by a man named John Shepherd Barron, who was born in India to Scottish parents. Shepherd's machines beat Goodfellow's machines by only 1 month, but he then became known as the man who invented the cash machine.
Oh.
However, they were different systems. The Shepherd machine didn't use cards like we use today. It used checks. Goodfellow's machine, however, used the card and pin system that we recognize today, and he claims to be the real inventor of the cash machine, which is more widely accepted today, as his was really the forerunner for what we use now. Goodfellow, unfortunately, did not own the rights or get rich off of the invention, and Mr. Shepherd Barron received an OBE in 2005 as the inventor of the automatic cash dispenser. But Goodfellow received an OBE in 2006 for services to banking as the patenter of the personal identification number. And to bring this back around to my experience, because somehow there is a connection here, when I was studying for my Life in the UK test, James Goodfellow came up as the man credited for inventing the ATM or cash point. So clearly we know where the UK government stands these days.
Yep.
That brings me to the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for that one. I did enjoy it. Like I said, I was not aware of these inventions made by British inventors. That's just awesome to know. All these inventions. And I did not know them, from the cat eye to the syringe to the ATM machine. And I love the fact that he was recognized for the person that invented the ATM machine and not the other gentleman. Because if you think about it, he took card and pin, and that's what we use till today. So I'm glad that that's on the test to become a citizen for the UK. All right. So, like I said, I had no clue about any of them. I am aware of, I'm lying. No, let me correct myself. With the ATM, that was in one of the last video that I did about British inventions. But for the cat eye, the syringe, the synthetic dye, the linoleum was a catcher to me. That one was like, the linoleum, because yeah, we a majority of us know what linoleum is. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, and the torpedo, I'm like, okay, I was not aware that these were British inventions. So there you have it. Inventions that definitely changed the world. Really enjoy this one from Girl Gone London. Like I said, the link will be in the description below. Go over and show her some love, guys. Now, guys, don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comment section and what you'd like me to check out next. Just leave it in the comment section and your girl got you. Be good, be kind, be safe, love each other, and I'll definitely catch you guys in another video. Bye.